how immune is our population right now? Well, our population is immune enough so that the Omicron surge left us, and we're over it. The surge, anyway. The virus will be around, but the surge is over. And a study just came out that the CDC sponsored and paid for, looking at antibody levels across a wide swath of the population, including here at Wake Forest Baptist. We were part of that. And so it turns out that amongst kids that of all ages, greater than 2, I think it was, about 60% of our kids have gotten COVID sometime during the last 2 years. That's a pretty high number. A lot of them were asymptomatic or had such mild infections that just went under the radar screen. 60%. And then in adults, it's a little bit less than that. Just a tad over half of us have gotten COVID over the last 2 years. Now that data, they stopped collecting at the end of January. And if you remember, the Omicron surge wasn't even over then. There were still a lot of people getting COVID after that. So the numbers are actually probably even higher than that. So we're at an area now where, at least to the variants that we have right now, our immunity is pretty darn good. And that's why we're talking about masks coming off, and that's why we're talking about relaxing some of the other few remaining restrictions we have. So that's good news. Now, if you're immunocompromised or have a lot of underlying health conditions, then your antibody levels fall quicker after immunization or after natural infection. And that's why the mask still makes sense for you. So where are we going to be at over the next few weeks in the summer? Well, I can tell you that I think it's a good time to start planning your summer vacation. In fact, if you haven't done it yet, good luck finding a place if you're looking for rental property or a hotel, because a lot of other people have already been booking up. I think it's going to be a good summer. And I know that camps for kids are also booking up quick, day camps or so. Overnight camps, I think that if you're a child and you want to have an overnight camp for your child, go for it. There may very well be a vaccine requirement though. Because most camps that are overnight, I think, are going to require that COVID vaccine. If not, they should. I think if you want to go to Europe or travel, things are starting to open up considerably. A lot of countries are dropping their quarantine requirements, their testing requirements, and even Asia, Southeast Asia, Thailand, and Vietnam are going to be relaxing. Right now, they're kind of hard to get into, but they'll be relaxing their entry requirements here too in a month. Even Hawaii is relaxing their entry requirements. If you're doing travel like this, take a look at where you're going, look at exactly what the requirements are, just to make sure. But particularly if you're vaccinated, most places you won't even need to test. Except for right now, coming back to the United States. If you're returning to the United States, internationally, you have to have a test within 24 hours. And you can use home tests, but it has to be done in a video monitored type of way. And so make sure you look at the fine print on the INS and the CDC travel website on how to do that. Will that requirement go away? At some point it probably will. I don't know when, because it won't make sense. The other thing that I think we'll start to see go away are contact tracing, quarantine, and isolation. Now, one of those is actually coming true now. The CDC no longer recommends contact tracing, and except for certain high-risk populations, jails, prisons, nursing homes, cluster outbreaks in congregate areas. If you had a school that was having a large problem, you would do it. So it's more in response to a problem than it is just widespread contact tracing. which means that if you've been exposed to COVID, you're not going to get a phone call from the health department anymore. Does that mean you shouldn't lay low after being exposed to COVID? No, you'll probably still want to do so. If you're vaccinated, that means just getting tested 3 to 5 days after that exposure. If you're unvaccinated, you should stay home for 5 days and then get tested. And then you should wear a mask for 10 days after that exposure. But it means that the government's not doing it for you anymore. I think at some point quarantine will go away too, because we don't quarantine any of our other respiratory viruses, including influenza. But right now it hasn't, but I think it will. And when you think about it, it makes sense. If we're transferring responsibility for virus transmission and protection to the individual, and quarantine is kind of, we may not need that tool. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be a good citizen and you shouldn't do things that make sense anyway. If you get exposed to COVID and you know you are, be a good citizen. Lay low for 5 days if you're unvaccinated and get tested 3 to 5 days after that exposure. Wear your mask. Hey, I could have it. I could be an asymptomatic carrier. So wear a mask for the 10 days after that exposure. It just makes sense. Just do it. If you get sick, stay home. I mean, that's something we should have been doing for decades, right? Don't go to school or work with this big snotty runny nose or cough. Be good, be kind to your coworkers, be kind to your other students, and don't go to work sick. And if you're recovering and you say, hey, I'm mostly better, tomorrow I think it'll be completely gone, then wear a mask for 2 or 3 days. Don't give it to other people. So we're just going to have, this is what the virus being endemic is going to mean to us. These are decisions we should be making going forward. And I think it'll be fine and it'll be good. I don't think we need the government to tell us anymore what to do, unless COVID changes or a new variant comes or something really shifts the nature of the pandemic or the epidemic.